Everyone knows monsters don't exist.
The low hiss of an all-too-familiar voice invaded Johnny's ears again, as he lay as still as a statue. Tears silently welled up in his eyes as he made sure to keep his arms and legs as close to the middle of the bed as possible. A while before, he had made the mistake to fall asleep with his arm dangling off the side of the mattress. The sensation of his hand being crushed and broken was the most pointed incident in existence to his 6-year-old mind. His parents had found him on the floor with a mangled wrist. But they and the doctor told him that he had fallen out of bed. He wanted to believe them. The voice cut through the air again, sounding like a snake's hiss mashed with a hyena's mocking cackle. When it spoke, the air filled with a sulfuric smell that matched the voice, and it made Jonathan's face scrunch up in disgust.
Little one, I know you're up there.
It stopped for a moment, and the noise of claws scraping on a hardwood floor started to fill the room.
I heard what your mother said.
Jonathan curled up in the middle of the bed under mountains of blankets and pillows.
She said that I'm in your head, that I don't exist, and if you don't think about me, I'll go away.
It laughed at such a high pitch that it hurt Johnny's ears, and the entire room seemed to shake a little. All of a sudden, the room plunged into a deadly silence, and it hissed in a serious yet mocking tone.
Well then, little boy, go ahead, stop thinking about me.
As Jonathan's ears hit the pillow, the monster laughed again.
You helpless animal. You can't do anything about me. I have been here since the day you were born, and you will stay here until the day you die.
Jonathan would have screamed. He would have tried to leap across his room. He would have tried to turn the lamp on, but he couldn't. He was only a child, and the lamp was always just a little bit out of reach. The door a few inches too far away to jump to, and when he screamed, the only answer he would get was the beast matching his scream exactly, sardonically mocking his cries and wails. He would then lie in silence as incessant giggling echoed from the hell underneath, and the floor shook with heavy fits of laughter.
Go ahead, boy. Scream some more. Scream for your mother. Scream for your father. Scream so loud that the seraphs of heaven and the demons of hell hear you, and the world shakes. Nobody's going to do anything.
The beast had been there for a very long time. A presence that Jonathan only felt at night when the world was asleep. The first memories that Jonathan had of him was dreams. Only scattered fragments were distinguishable in his young mind, but if he really concentrated, he could remember nightmares that plagued him through his very young childhood, not nearly old enough to understand them or even make sense of what he was seeing. All he could feel was an animalistic instinct to run, to get away from the creature that lived underneath his bed, to escape the heavy, malevolent breathing that was the backdrop to all his nightmares. Eventually, he got to the point where he could articulate well enough to hint at the presence below. His parents would then sigh and lift up his sheet to show him that there was absolutely nothing there to be afraid of. John, you're perfectly safe. There's nothing down there." And there never was. But then at night, the dreams turned into reality. The breathing wouldn't stop when the dreams did. Instead, it would persist on in a rattling, wheezing drone that lasted until the morning. His parents told him that it was just the house settling, and that he was perfectly safe. But the beast was still there. Then he started to smell it, The stench changed from night to night. One evening, Jonathan would wake up to the reeking of rotting flesh, and the next he would be overwhelmed with what could only be described as gasoline fumes. It became hard to get a full night's sleep, and when he started trying to ignore the stenches and sounds to continue sleeping, but he never could completely forget about the beast. For even on nights when it seemed to be inactive, there would still be the occasional wafting of smoke and growling breath. The night of Jonathan's 6th birthday, it started to speak. It would whisper terrifying things and get louder and louder every night. By the time that he fell out of bed and his wrist was broken, he was petrified of this thing that was all too real for him. His parents weren't going to do anything, and he felt more trapped than he ever had before. There were nights where the worst part of the beast wasn't its existence or the fear that it triggered, but the horrible things it said. Words would whisper out from that dark space beneath the bed that no child should ever hear. If Jonathan's will was weaker, he would have thrown himself down to his death just to get away from that infernal voice. And there he was, lying in the middle of the bed, driving laughter threatening to push him to the very edge. He figured he had one option, and one option only. He had to do the unthinkable and acknowledge its existence. Please leave me alone. His voice left him in barely a whisper, but the beast heard it, and surprised that the child talked, it took a second to answer.
I don't think so.
Its voice trailed off with a flick of a serpentine tongue. But maybe we could be friends instead? Jonathan used the only sentence he was ever taught to use when faced with an opponent. Laughing, screaming like a maniac, the monster screeched out a shrill,
"Sure thing, boy, we'll be the best of friends,"
followed by a terrifying, wall-shaking, chest-burning cackle. So are we friends? Jonathan stammered.
"Sure, child, come down here, and I can see you, and you can see me."
In his childish ignorance, Jonathan figured that it was telling the truth, and even if it wasn't, he wanted this torment to end, and whatever was waiting down there had to be better.
That's right. Step onto the ground. Come to see me, my friend.
The second his foot hit the ground, he squealed in pain. A hand much bigger than an adult man's and covered in disgusting black hair grabbed onto his ankle. Jagged, uneven claws dug into his skin as he tried to pull his leg up. The creature screamed and tried to pull him down. The arm was massive and was so muscular it looked like snakes were squirming beneath the skin. Jonathan screamed when he saw it, and he used every bit of strength in his body to force himself away from it and onto his bed. The hand couldn't follow and retreated back underneath the bed, accompanied by violent wheezing and heavy breaths. You lied, you monster!" The beast hissed like a snake and fell silent for the rest of the night. Jonathan falling into a fitful sleep. The next day, Jonathan was so tired that he could barely drag himself out of bed and go about with his day. The beast was getting stronger as he lurked in the darkness, and the boy worried that soon he would be able to drag itself up from the dark place underneath the bed. He knew for sure it was getting stronger, as he began to see it everywhere he went. At first, it was just an out-of-place shadow, or shuffling in the bushes, but as time went on, and his 7th birthday drew nearer, these visions would get more detailed, more petrifying every time. Dirty yellow eyes would peer out of the shadows, massive claw marks would appear on the trees outside of his house, and that horrible breathing would follow him everywhere, constantly in his ear wherever he was. The beast would not leave him alone, and it was taking a horrible toll on his mental state. After 3 sleepless nights in a row, Jonathan came to the conclusion that it would be either the beast or himself. He tried to tell his parents, but Mommy wasn't around too much. He tried to tell a teacher, but they seemed to only care when he mentioned that his parents didn't notice it. So he figured he would have to take care of it. And he would do it completely on his own. He just needed a chance. That chance came the night after his birthday. His mother had put on a little party for him and 3 of his friends, and he had been given a state-of-the-art baseball bat and glove. He was overjoyed when he unwrapped the bat because he knew in his heart exactly how it would liberate him. After thanking his mother a dozen times, he ran upstairs to slip the bat discreetly underneath his pillow, hoping that neither his parents nor the beast somehow noticed, before returning to the party. That night, after he tucked himself into bed, he fell asleep like a baby. His room, completely peaceful. The familiar breathing, along with a low growl, jerked him awake.
"This is it, little one,"
the beast hissed, accompanied with the smell of burning rubber and decomposing meat.
"Your time has come."
Jonathan was scared, but knew that he had some hope in the instrument lying right beneath his head.
"Climb out of bed. Come down here. Come to my realm."
This was said in a surprisingly calm tone, compared to the maniac laughter that usually filled his room. Jonathan put on the best fake apathy in his voice as he could, and he answered, "I don't care if you want me. Come up here and get me. I won't fight." The beast paused for a moment, as if there was hesitation in its voice, but finally, it hissed.
"Yes, I will come up there."
Jonathan readied his bat, its aluminum glinting in the faint light that the room had. One of the monster's giant hands grabbed onto the edge of the bed, and with a mighty heave, the other hand grabbed on next to its twin. It was almost like the beast was pulling itself up from a chasm, an incredibly strenuous task. Jonathan was shaking in terror as he saw the disgusting arms and the maggots crawling underneath the oversized claws. No child could imagine a creature as horrible as this, and no child should ever have to. Finally, after heaving and pulling, the very tip of the beast's head became visible from Jonathan's position. 4 giant curled horns protruded from its skull, each one a different size and shape. Immediately, Jonathan knew where to bring the bat down, and he would have to wait a few more seconds when he could see the beast's eyes. He knew that he had to strike. The bat came down with a speed and accuracy one would never expect from a young child. Not only did it hit the beast right between the disgusting yellow eyes, the surprise made him let go of the edge of the bed and fall. Jonathan looked over the edge to see, to his disappointment, that the evil being had not fallen back to wherever he had crawled from, but was instead struggling to get up from the ground right in front of him. For the first time, he saw the creature in its entirety. Its body was covered in the same coarse fur as its arms, but was much less muscular and incredibly thin. Its ribs were protruding from its skin, and its legs looked like it belonged to a malnourished bull. Its head and face were reminiscent of a deer, a bobcat, and a jackal, and was an absolutely horrifying sight to behold. A forked tongue slithered back and forth in between its needle-like fangs. Ignoring the horrible face, Jonathan opted to look at the ground instead as he swung the bat again. It was brought down hard onto the beast's left leg, and its bone cracked under the blow. The beast swung at the boy with one of his clawed hands, but it missed in the confusion, and it staggered backwards. Suddenly, an insane courage overtook the young boy, and he leapt from the bed, bat overhead. He brought it down hard on the beast's skull again, and the creature fell to the ground. Jonathan didn't stop there, though. He kept beating it, pounding it into the ground. "You're nothing but a bug!" he screamed at the creature as he hit it with the force of 1,000 trucks. The creature tried to stop him, but this was a confusing place for it, and it had been taken by surprise. Blood and tears ran down its face as it murmured, please don't kill me," through a mouth of broken teeth. "Know what? I think I may have a better idea," Jonathan giggled as he put down the bat.
Yes, anything, just don't kill me.
It snarled, humbled beyond what could have ever been expected from that arrogant horror. Mr. Gillette will see you now. The intercom went off in the waiting room as the sharply dressed 30-year-old stood up and straightened his tie. Thank you, he said sharply into the intercom as he opened up the door to his boss's office. Jonathan, why are you here? Why didn't you knock? Mr. Gillette said snidely as he eyed the newcomer underneath his spectacles. Jonathan laughed and stepped in. Call me sir now. He started making himself a coffee with Mr. Gillette's cappuccino machine. Don't touch that. What do you think you're doing, barging in here like this? I have an important meeting in 5 minutes. Jonathan looked at his superior and then at the coffee that he had just begun to sip. Oh, I am that important meeting. I convinced your dear secretary that I desperately needed to talk to you, and to put me down as a client. He grasped the warm drink in his hand. This coffee's disgusting, almost as bad as your hair. Jonathan tossed it onto the ground, and the ceramic mug broke, the brown liquid spilling all over the white carpet. What do you think you're doing, Jonathan? You have 5 seconds before I call security. Jonathan sat down in the chair across from his manager and leaned in, dropping his voice to a whisper. I want your job. You can either give it to me, or we can do it the hard way. Mr. Gillette pushed Jonathan away and hovered his finger above the security button. Get out. All right. Hard way it is. Might want to get your things in order. Jonathan winked at him and left. And Mr. Gillette simply sat there trying to make sense of the events that had just transpired. That night, Thomas Gillette was working late, when apparently he made the decision that he would rather take the 20-story fall from his office than go on for another day. Jonathan Haynes was the last person to speak to him and thus was considered to possibly have a part in this. However, he was out getting drinks with friends that night and was nowhere near the office. Reviewing of the security camera shows that Mr. Gillette was walking around seemingly talking to himself and later in the tapes running from absolutely nothing. At the end, he was shown trudging towards the office with a crowbar in his hand. Later investigation shows that Mr. Gillette must have used the crowbar to break the glass out of the frame so that he could wriggle out. He had huge scratches on his back that at first were an anomaly, but were later deemed to be caused by the broken glass. All the police needed to check this off as a suicide was there, but one investigator was still suspicious of foul play. Due to the persistence of this particular detective, they went to check the footage from his office itself. The camera in his office skipped frames and were very unreliable for the first couple minutes of the tape. After Mr. Gillette left his office to go to the hall, the camera burnt out completely and recorded nothing but darkness for the remainder of the evening, but nobody thought to double-check the first 5 minutes. If one was to pause it and focus on the far corner of the room, they would see a dark shape. Through the grainy, low-definition footage, it almost looked like a crouching beast with massive claws, a nest of horns, and a wide, toothy, malevolent smile plastered across its goat-like face. But that is ridiculous. Everyone knows. Monsters don't
exist.